December 15th, 2020, Novorossiysk Naval Base, Russia's Black Sea coast. Beneath the dark waters of the harbor, something is moving, silent, invisible, unstoppable. Above, docked at the pier, sits one of Russia's most formidable weapons, a Project 636.3 improved Kilo-class submarine. NATO calls these boats black holes for their ability to disappear from sonar. Worth $400 million, armed with Kalibr cruise missiles that can strike targets 1,500 miles away. The crew has no idea what's coming. At 52 seconds past the hour, the water erupts, not in a massive explosion, but in a calculated surgical strike. The submarine's stern, where the propeller, rudder, and diving planes meet, takes a direct hit. In that moment, naval warfare changed forever. This wasn't a torpedo from another submarine. It wasn't a missile from a warship. It was something no military had ever seen before in the 150-year history of submarine combat. An underwater drone, autonomous, lethal, and operated by a nation with no conventional navy. This is the story of how Ukraine just rewrote the rules of war at sea. To understand what happened on that December morning, we need to rewind 3 years to February 24th, 2022. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the naval balance was laughably one-sided. Russia's Black Sea Fleet, over 40 warships, including frigates, corvettes, landing ships, and those deadly Kilo-class submarines. Ukraine's Navy, one aging frigate, which they scuttled in its own port to prevent Russian capture. On paper, Russia owned the Black Sea. They imposed a naval blockade, trapping millions of tons of Ukrainian grain in port and driving global food prices to crisis levels. Russian warships cruised off Odessa's coast with apparent impunity, launching Kalibr cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities. But Ukraine's engineers had a different plan. In a garage behind a country house near Kiev, a group of friends gathered in the spring of 2022. They weren't military officers. They were IT specialists, civilian engineers, and entrepreneurs. What they built in that garage would change naval warfare forever. They called it the Sea Baby. The concept was brutally simple. Take a small motorboat, attach satellite communications via Starlink, pack it with 850 kilograms of explosives, and control it remotely from hundreds of miles away. Cost? About $2,000. Less than the price of a single Tomahawk cruise missile and a fraction of what their targets were worth. By summer 2022, Ukraine's security service, the SBU, had formed a public-private partnership with these designers. Brigadier General Ivan Lukashevich, a senior SBU officer, oversaw the program personally. They weren't just building boats. They were building a new kind of navy, a technological navy, a drone navy. In October 2022, they struck for the first time. Sea Baby drones breached Russian defenses and drove deep inside Sevastopol harbor in occupied Crimea, home of the Black Sea Fleet. Though that initial mission had limited success, it was a proof of concept. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe, not even Russia's most protected naval fortress. What came next was unprecedented. Over the next 2 years, Ukraine's drone fleet evolved from kamikaze boats into a full-spectrum weapons system. The numbers are staggering. By late 2024, Ukrainian naval drones had struck Russian vessels at least 21 times. 10 ships were confirmed destroyed or sunk. Another dozen sustained critical damage. The list reads like a naval graveyard. The corvette Sergei Kotov, the missile boat Ivanovets, the landing ships Olenigorsky Gornyak and Caesar Kunikov, the patrol ship, vessel after vessel, each worth tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, sent to the bottom by drones that cost less than a luxury car. But the impact went far beyond individual ships. By spring 2024, Britain's defense ministry made an extraordinary declaration. Russia's Black Sea Fleet was functionally inactive. The Russian Navy, a force that had dominated these waters for 3 centuries since the age of Peter the Great, had been driven from Crimea entirely. They retreated to Novorossiysk, Russia itself, hiding behind layers of boom defenses and constant air patrols. The Ukrainian drone campaign had achieved what seemed impossible. A nation with virtually no conventional navy had gained the upper hand against one of the world's greatest naval powers. They broke the Russian blockade. Ukrainian grain exports resumed. The global food crisis eased. And they did it all with technology built in garages and workshops. The Seababy platform itself became increasingly sophisticated. Initial models could travel 1,000 kilometers at speeds up to 90 kilometers per hour. By late 2023, they carried 850-kilogram warheads, nearly twice the payload of a Tomahawk cruise missile. But Ukraine didn't stop there. In October 2025, the SBU unveiled upgraded Seababy variants that pushed the boundaries even further. Range, 1,500 kilometers, enough to reach anywhere in the Black Sea. Payload capacity, 2,000 kilograms. Some models carried multi-launch rocket systems. Others mounted gyro-stabilized machine gun turrets with AI-assisted targeting. A few were equipped with Italian-made MN-103 Manta sea mines, which they would deploy in Russian shipping lanes. The drones incorporated multiple redundant communication systems, a lesson learned after an early mission failed when Elon Musk declined Starlink connectivity in Crimean waters. They use AI-driven friend or foe identification. Some could even launch small aerial attack drones from their decks, turning them into miniature drone carriers. Most remarkably, in May 2025, a Magura V5 drone, Seababy's smaller cousin operated by Ukrainian military intelligence, shot down a Russian Su-30 fighter jet over the Black Sea using an American-made AM-9X Sidewinder missile. It was the first time in history a naval drone had destroyed an aircraft. The implications were staggering. Russian helicopters and patrol aircraft, previously the primary defense against surface drones, were no longer safe. The hunters had become the hunted. But all of these successes shared one common factor. They were surface drones. They skimmed across the waves, visible to radar and thermal imaging, vulnerable to air attack and defensive fire. What Ukraine needed was something different, something that could strike beneath the surface, something that could hunt the hunters. They needed to go underwater. To understand what Ukraine was up against, you need to understand the target. The Project 636.3, Varshavyanka-class submarine, NATO reporting name, Improved Kilo 2, represents one of Russia's most successful naval designs. First developed in the 1970s and continuously upgraded ever since, these diesel-electric boats are optimized for one thing: stealth. The statistics are impressive. Length, 73.8 meters. Displacement, 3,100 tons submerged. Maximum depth, 300 meters. Crew, 52 sailors. Endurance, 45 days without surfacing. But it's not the numbers that made these submarines legendary. It's the silence. The hull is coated with special anechoic tiles, a rubber compound designed to absorb active sonar waves and reduce the submarine's acoustic signature. The engine plant is mounted away from the hull on shock absorbers, eliminating mechanical noise. The propeller is designed for minimal cavitation. Advanced noise reduction systems dampen every sound from pumps, generators, and crew movement. The result? The U.S. Navy gave these boats a nickname that says it all: Black Hole. Once submerged, a Kilo-class submarine becomes almost impossible to detect. They can lurk in shallow coastal waters, hunt other submarines, and strike without warning. Their 6 533mm torpedo tubes can fire wire-guided torpedoes, lay mines, or launch Kalibr cruise missiles. And those Kalibr missiles? Range, 1,500 to 2,500 kilometers depending on the variant. A single kilo can strike targets deep inside Ukraine or even across Europe, all while remaining invisible beneath the waves. Russia has built these submarines for decades. 6 of them serve in the Black Sea Fleet alone. Each one costs approximately $400 million to build, though with current sanctions and supply chain disruptions, replacing one could run as high as $500 million. For Ukraine, these submarines represented an existential threat. Surface ships could be tracked by satellite, targeted by drones, hit with missiles. But submarines? Different game entirely. Traditional anti-submarine warfare requires sophisticated equipment Ukraine simply didn't have. Deep water sonar arrays, maritime patrol aircraft with magnetic anomaly detectors, attack helicopters with dipping sonar, or ideally hunter-killer submarines of their own. Ukraine had none of these. What they did have was ingenuity, desperation, and a growing expertise in unmanned systems. Throughout 2023 and 2024, Ukrainian intelligence tracked Russian submarine movements. The Kilos were operating from Novorossiysk, launching cruise missile strikes against Ukrainian cities from positions hundreds of kilometers away. After each strike, they would slip back underwater and disappear. The port of Novorossiysk itself was heavily defended. It had become Russia's primary Black Sea naval base after the retreat from Sevastopol. Patrol boats, air defenses, physical barriers designed to stop Ukrainian surface drones, constant surveillance. On paper, it should have been impregnable, but Ukraine's engineers saw an opening. Surface drones had proven vulnerable to detection and defensive fire. But what about underwater drones? What if you could build something that approached below the surface, invisible to radar and thermal imaging? Something that could navigate through harbor barriers designed only to stop surface vessels. Something that could strike a submarine at its most vulnerable point, while it was docked, with limited maneuvering space, unable to use its greatest asset, the ability to hide in open ocean? The concept was brilliant. The execution would be even more impressive. They called it Subsea Baby. The exact details of the operation remain classified. What we do know comes from the SBU's announcement and the limited video footage they released. Sometime in mid-December 2025, Ukrainian intelligence identified an opportunity. A Project 636.3 submarine was docked at Novorossiysk's naval pier. The target was confirmed to be carrying 4 Kalibr cruise missiles, weapons that had terrorized Ukrainian cities for years. The mission was planned as a joint operation between the SBU's 13th Main Directorate of Military Counterintelligence and the Naval Forces of Ukraine. This wasn't a lone wolf attack. This was coordinated, professional, and surgical. Unlike the surface Sea Baby, the Subsea Baby operates underwater. The SBU hasn't released technical specifications, but based on what we know about modern unmanned underwater vehicles, we can make educated assessments. It would need autonomous or semi-autonomous navigation. GPS doesn't work underwater, so it likely uses inertial navigation combined with underwater acoustic positioning. It would need a powerful enough propulsion system to fight currents and maintain depth control. It would need long enough battery life to make the journey from Ukrainian-controlled waters to Novorossiysk, potentially hundreds of kilometers. Most critically, it would need a warhead large enough to inflict critical damage on a submarine's pressure hull and mechanical systems. The approach would have been methodical. Unlike a surface drone that can be spotted by radar or thermal cameras, an underwater drone is nearly invisible. You can't see it. You can't hear it over the ambient noise of a busy port. And passive sonar systems in harbors are designed to detect submarines, not small autonomous vehicles. The Subsea Baby would have navigated through the harbor, potentially passing beneath boom defenses designed to stop surface threats. It would have used whatever sensing systems it carried, likely cameras, sonar, or both, to identify and approach the target. Based on the Ukrainian video released, the strike occurred near the submarine's stern. This is the most vulnerable and operationally critical area. The stern houses the propeller, the vertical rudder that controls turning, and the diving planes that control depth. Damage here doesn't just disable propulsion, it makes the submarine uncontrollable underwater. The detonation sent plumes of water skyward. Russian crews scrambled. Alarms sounded across the base. Within hours, Ukrainian intelligence assessed the damage. Critical. The submarine was put out of action. It would require extensive repairs if it could be repaired at all. Given the complexity of submarine construction and Russia's limited shipyard capacity under sanctions, this boat could be out of commission for months or even years. The strategic implications were immediate and profound. For the first time in naval history, an underwater drone had successfully attacked a submarine. Not a surface drone, not a torpedo from another submarine, not a mine. An autonomous underwater vehicle. The rules had changed. The sinking of the Moskva in April 2022 shocked the world. The destruction of Russian warships by surface drones was unprecedented. But the Subsea Baby attack on December 15, 2025, opened a new chapter entirely. Consider what this means for naval warfare. For over a century, submarines have been the apex predators of the ocean. Their greatest defense was stealth, the ability to hide beneath the waves where no one could find them. Even in port, submarines were considered relatively safe. Yes, they could be targeted by commando raids or airstrikes, But these required significant resources and carried massive risks. But now, a relatively cheap underwater drone can slip past defenses, navigate through harbors, and strike submarines at their moorings. And it can do so without risking a single human life on the attacking side. The cost-benefit analysis is staggering. Subsea Baby likely costs similar to its surface cousin, somewhere in the $2,000 to $3,000 range. The submarine it attacked? $400 million. Potentially $500 million to replace under current sanctions. That's a 1,500 to 1 cost ratio. Even if you launched 100 Subsea Baby drones and only one succeeded, you'd still come out ahead financially. But the implications go far beyond economics. Navies around the world are now facing an uncomfortable reality. Traditional defenses don't work against underwater autonomous systems. You can't shoot what you can't see. Radar is useless underwater. Thermal imaging is useless underwater. Even sonar struggles to detect small, slow-moving, autonomous vehicles in the acoustic clutter of a busy port. The United States Navy has been developing its own unmanned underwater vehicles for years, but primarily for reconnaissance, mine detection, and submarine-launched operations, not for attacking submarines in port. Ukraine just demonstrated that asymmetric warfare has moved beneath the waves. Russia's response has been telling. In the days following the attack, Russian naval forces increased patrol activities around Novorossiysk. But what can you patrol against? An underwater drone doesn't need to surface. It doesn't emit radio signals. It just arrives. For Russia's Black Sea Fleet, already battered by 3 years of Ukrainian drone and missile attacks, this represents potentially the final nail in the coffin. If submarines aren't safe in port, then nothing is safe in port. Ukraine has proven that with ingenuity, technology, and determination, they can strike anywhere in the Black Sea. They've neutralized approximately 1/3 of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. They've forced the remaining ships to retreat hundreds of kilometers from Ukrainian shores. They've broken the blockade and restored maritime trade. And now they've shown they can hunt submarines, the one asset Russia thought was untouchable. The broader implications for global naval strategy are profound. Small nations, non-state actors, or even private military contractors could potentially develop similar capabilities. The age of expensive warships as symbols of national power may be ending. The age of cheap, distributed, autonomous systems may be beginning. As retired U.S. Army General David Petraeus stated, the fact that Ukraine, without any meaningful naval vessels, could sink over 1/3 of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and force it to withdraw from Sevastopol and the Western Black Sea is an extraordinary tribute to the Ukrainian tech sector and those in uniform. That tribute just got even more extraordinary. On that December morning in Novorossiysk, something changed, not just for Russia and Ukraine, for everyone. The history of naval warfare is a history of revolutions. The ironclad warship made wooden ships obsolete overnight. The submarine challenged surface dominance. The aircraft carrier redefined power projection. Nuclear propulsion changed everything again. Each revolution followed the same pattern. A new technology emerges, skeptics dismiss it, and then suddenly, the old ways become obsolete. We may be living through the next revolution right now. Ukraine's journey from having no navy to dominating the Black Sea took just 3 years. From a garage in Kiev to sinking Russian warships, from surface drones to underwater drones, from defensive desperation to offensive dominance. The Subsea Baby attack wasn't just a military success. It was a proof of concept for future warfare, a demonstration that in the 21st century, expensive platforms are vulnerable to cheap autonomous systems. That stealth is no longer enough. That the only true defense might be to never present a target at all. Already, nations around the world are watching and learning. Australia has announced plans for autonomous underwater vehicles as part of its AUKUS partnership with the US and UK. France launched its seabed warfare strategy. NATO established an undersea infrastructure coordination cell. China is building an underwater Great Wall of autonomous sensors and weapons. The future of naval warfare may not be measured in aircraft carriers and submarines, but in swarms of autonomous drones underwater, on the surface, in the air, working in coordination to overwhelm traditional defenses. But perhaps the most profound lesson from Ukraine's success isn't about technology at all. It's about adaptability, about refusing to accept the battlefield as it exists, about innovation born from necessity. When Russia invaded, they believed their naval dominance was absolute. They were wrong. Ukraine proved that creativity and determination can overcome raw military power, that a nation with no navy could build one from scratch and win. The engineers who built the first Sea Baby in a garage near Kiev probably didn't imagine they were changing naval warfare forever. They were just trying to survive, trying to protect their country, trying to strike back at an enemy that seemed invincible. But in doing so, they wrote a new chapter in military history. On December 15, 2025, somewhere beneath the waters of Novorossiysk harbor, that chapter reached its most dramatic page yet. An underwater drone, silent, invisible, relentless, struck a submarine that was supposed to be unstoppable. The black hole met its match, and the world will never look at naval warfare the same way again. Because in the end, this story isn't really about drones or submarines. It's about what happens when creativity confronts power, when innovation challenges tradition, when David faces Goliath, not with a sling, but with code, composite materials, and an autonomous underwater vehicle built in a nation that refused to surrender. This is the new face of war, and it's only just beginning.